Hello and welcome everybody to this amazing webinar, the first of many. We're kicking off this webinar series with Black men in customer success. Can't wait to dive into this discussion with these fine gentlemen we have on the panel. I'm Kenny Groom. I'll be the host and moderator. I'm in customer success myself, senior manager at a company called VisitPay. First up, I want to do a quick shout out to the partners who helped us put this event on. First up, we're going to thank Success Coaching and Success in Black for that working in partnership to bring this event right at the close of Black History Month, right? Perfect timing. For those who aren't familiar, Success Coaching is a world leader in customer success training. They have a mission to reinvent what customer success training experience for leaders and customer success managers looks like. They're making it accessible. They're offering a variety of training options from self-paced courses, live instructor-led boot camps, and even 12-week coaching programs, so folks can really get started all on that customer success journey. This field is really expanding, so excited to have them on the team as a partner. To find out more about what Success Coaching can offer, really quickly, real easy, just type in successcoaching.co. And we're going to drop that link in the chat as well. But definitely amazing to have them as a partner for us today. In addition to that, a newer organization that I'm proud to be a part of myself is Success in Black. This org is really created as a platform for Black professionals in this customer success space. We know that businesses are putting a lot more resources and capital into growing this function. And the focus of Success in Black is really to elevate Black professionals and customer success by providing powerful resources to help them advance their career. We're just getting started. We're planning programs like this in partnership with companies like Success Coaching all the time. So look for more actual dialogue and webinar series and things like that to come in the near future. You can follow us on LinkedIn. Just go to that search bar, search for Success in Black. We're also going to put that in the chat as well. And you can also check out our website, successinblack.co. But before we dive into this conversation with our panelists, we're gonna do some housekeeping, some lay of the land rules for how the engagement's gonna go, because we want to hear from the folks who are chiming in via chat and things like that. So just first up, this call will be recorded. We're going to make sure that, once we record it, we figure out what pieces, how to get that content out to the masses after this call. But in addition to that, you can use that Q&A box for questions. And then for the chat box, you can use the chat box for other conversations. Let's keep the dialogue going. I'm pretty sure once the panelists start sharing their stories, the dialogue and the QA, it'll just keep going. So I'm excited to hear from everybody listening in from around the country and probably from around the world. And in closing, I just want to say I thank the fellas for giving us their time and really sharing their story. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to the fine panelists that we have here. Sean, did you want to kick us off and let folks know about your background?
Thanks, Ken. I appreciate it. Hi, my name is Sean Fleming. I'm the VP of Customer Engagement at a company called ZenDrive. It's a driving behavior analytics software company based in San Francisco. I've been there for almost 3 years now, and it's good to be here.
Chris, you up next?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Contreras, and I'm Senior Vice President of Customer Success at Mountain. And I've been at Mountain for a little over 9 months now. We are a CTV media technology company focused on making TV advertising accessible to everyone, specifically folks who cut the cord. Really excited to be here and share some of my background.
Got it. Mike, you want to close us out?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name is Mike Lee, saying hi from Durham, North Carolina. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Public Input. And what public input does is just empower local and state governments to, to increase their public engagement, through different tools that we have, and we really consult to get that sort of thing happening. I've been in customer success for quite a while now. I've done a lot of different roles, but I really enjoy building CS organizations, as well as mentoring and growing, diversity within the organizations themselves. And so I'm really excited about being here. I'm excited about this panel. I'm ready to get going.
Thanks, gentlemen. So first question up. This one is definitely one we had to kick things off with. What does it mean for you, each of you gentlemen, being a Black man in customer success in 2022? What does it mean for you? Chris, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, definitely. Interesting, and fun fact, I stumbled upon customer success, which I'm sure it'll be a repetitive theme across, the conversations today with the other panelists. I actually come from an operations and strategy background. And, for the better part of the first half of my career, I was running a lot of operational teams for media companies. Then I went into the startup world and stayed in operations and then moved over into a CS function. The interesting part is that both across the media spectrum and going into technology company is I was primarily the only Latino, and I'll start with I consider myself an Afro-Latino, so I'm half Black, half Latino, and I was the only of either in a senior position. So my first VP of CS role, it was literally sitting on an executive team of no one that looked like me or represented my background. And that's the component that drew me to focus a little bit more on creating a diverse customer success organization. My background wasn't like your traditional, account management background, moving up the ranks in leadership and then becoming a CS leader, or working through professional services or like a platform experience type of structure, moving into the CS function there. In that experience, I realized that diverse backgrounds and also diverse talent is an important imperative to driving a successful organization. So, that was my first interplay into the CS world. And it was the first reality of like, how can I help, pull a chair out for others who are probably not seeing CS as like an area of focus or an area of opportunity for them. So that's, was my first initial gut experience in moving into CS.
Appreciate that. Sean or Mike, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So I think what we're here from all of us is at points in times where we're the only of whatever you want, whatever category. And that's really, really important to note, because as we move up the chain, that's going to be more prominent. And, I was speaking to one of my employees, Mary, earlier, and we were talking about this particular panel, and we're talking about what this actually means as being a Black man in CS. And so we all carry a weight in 2022 of trying to perform, trying to succeed in customer success in whatever area that we're in. A lot of times we hear, even when we're younger, even now, we hear, I got to represent, right? And we're like, we're the only group that has to represent, because we understand that, we as a people, we get categorized, right? So if one person does a certain thing negative or so, we're all that. And so when we have this weight on our shoulders to actually say, all right, we're here, we're doing well, and we have to pull people along with us. So it's our responsibility not only to show the world in CS that, look, there may only be a few of us, but we're rocking and others can do the same thing. But we have to pull people and mentor people and grow people. We have that responsibility itself. I've been in a lot of organizations where I was the only, but I got an opportunity to become a leader not too long ago. And this is my second role as an official leader. And so that's what I try to do. I try to mentor, I try to grow. I've spoken to Sean a few times, there's Chris on the panel as well. I mean, not the panel, he's attending. I speak to anybody I can and say, look, you can do this. Let's get this together. Let me give you an opportunity, because opportunity is where it lays. And when we're here, we have the opportunity to give opportunity. And we have the responsibility, not just an opportunity, but we have the responsibility to help move this forward. I'm not saying not hire anybody of any other race or anything like that, but we now have the eyes and the platform to be able to present these particular opportunities to those and spread it across.
Appreciate that, Mike. And Sean, I know you got something you want to say about this specific question, just around, what does it mean for you being a Black man in this customer success space in 2022? You want to close us out on this one?
Yeah, I think, Mike hit it the nail on the head as perfectly as always. Unfortunately, it's still lonely, right? We're still that one or two individuals. And like Mike was saying, it thins out as you rise up. But, hopefully as leaders, we do whatever we can to promote diverse hiring practices within our respective companies and do our best to be on the lookout for that kind of talent. And maybe it takes a little longer. Maybe it's, you got to look in some different spots, but I encourage that with our HR professionals, our people management people in our company. And they've been so supportive of that. So I'm grateful for that. It's so important because I think it enriches the companies that we're in. It's a global community. So we need diverse perspectives, and I think it's going to elevate us. So, but as of today, it's still lonely, right? And I think that's why we're so excited to meet colleagues like Chris, like Mike. You get excited because you don't see that in your day to day. You have to get into the success in Blacks and other forums to connect and bond with your peers. So that's of critical importance. I'm so grateful to that kind of organization to foster that. I mean, that's how I got connected to Mike and Chris in the first place. So we just need to do more of that because it's still slow, unfortunately. So we got to do what we can to accelerate our progress.
Thanks for that, Sean. And all three of the panelists really dropping gems early on in this discussion around going in an area of the business, right, where you don't see a lot of people that look like you, right? That can be lonely, to your point, Sean, but definitely commend all three of you. And so perfect segue, Sean, in terms of, I want to take it back a little bit to the experience that you each have individually, being in this space. So Mike, I want to start with you. I know you mentioned you've had several roles in the customer success space now. So right. I'm curious to know for you in particular, how has this experience in CS been for you?
The experience has been actually great for me. My first official role in CS was a place called Aptio, and I was able to secure a job. It was customer success customer success advisor. And so in that place, there were the customer success advisors who kind of had the above the line conversations. Then it was CSMs who were more hands-on technical. And then CSEs who were the CS engineers who were kind of like the really, really deep technical people there. And so having that role gave me a view. Now I'd already got my MBA and my PMP and everything like that. And I think that's what helped me to land that role. But having the conversation and having those above the line conversations with the CEOs, CIOs, I mean, I had like NASDAQ, I had Viacom, I had those companies, and I'm sitting in the rooms with these people, helping them to understand the value of, IT budget. And that's what Aptio did. And I felt home. I felt like I can do this, right? This was the first time I actually felt. I mean, I came out as a Java developer out of school. I did some technical stuff, moved into project program, product management kind of things, but all that kind of gelled together in CS because it was relationship, and I'm really good at building these relationships and having these conversations, these value-driven conversations. So having that role and then moving on to another role where I was actually building the organization from scratch really gave me a wide view of it. So my experience was actually really good. I didn't necessarily have a hard time jumping into CS, but back then, CS was still at its infancy state, right? And so it was like there was more jobs than there were people back then, but now it's flipped, right? There's so many people trying to get into the CS, there's a lot of jobs, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of jobs, but there's all these criteria that have come along. So my journey into CS was actually pretty smooth, but again, I was the only in my first two opportunities. I was the only Black male. I was actually the only Black person in CS in both of those roles. Think about it, and these are larger organizations. So we're still, like Sean said, we're still the only. There's still situations where we're the only. And that's important to note as we go through all our conversations here.
Great points, Mike. Sean, you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a similar evolution in my career. I started off with, wonderful large organizations, from professional services, management consulting, which I think is an excellent background to get into CS, because my thing was about being that problem solver, right? And if you are a very good problem solver, they love you in consulting, and they're going to keep putting you on engagements to solve problems and train other people to solve problems, right? Almost give them a framework or a guide, right? Which I think is always good in our profession. And so that was great. But unfortunately, the culture of these kind of consulting firms is really borne out at the client site, right? Whatever client you're at, I was on very large engagements, you're on that project for a year or something like that, that becomes your entire ecosystem. And many times you're the one, even though you're part of a large organization where there are, Black men, Black women, and so forth, other minorities. But, when you got to that client site, you're a smaller team, a tiger team, if you will. And then again, you're the only. And so, that's tough. And you just kind of almost have a dual experience, right? You have your work experience and your social experience. And I think the startup world kind of flipped it, right? Because the startup world, you need to go all in. You got to wear multiple hats. You got to put all your sweat equity into it, depending on your role, of course. And you get deeper because you're in the trenches with everyone there. So it starts to change. I've had the benefit of a lot of post sales and pre-sales experience to round it out. And I think once I got to that startup world and it really started evolving to more of what's now customer success, then it was technical account management, it was pre-sales, it was solution consulting, all those kind of things. It all came together, and you start making further connections. And I think that keeps you going, right? You make all these connections, you expand your network, you either go very deep in a dense network, you have loose connections to broader networks. It helps you find other positions, and that helped keep me going there. So that was my experience. It's been very good. I mean, I think I've developed, I've grown, it shaped me, and I think I've been able to bring up others in that ilk. And so I'm trying now to do more to encourage others, make others aware of this profession, of what we can do, the benefits, financial, personal growth, development. There's so many great things about it. I want the world to be aware, and everything we can put a spotlight on it, I'm willing to do.
Appreciate that, Sean. Chris?
Yeah, well said on both sides. I'll take the question a little bit differently, just from a perspective of it's clear and it's evident that the theme throughout this call that we started with is, it's lonely in this specific area of focus, which is CS, especially as you start moving up to leadership. But my experience, like I mentioned, prior to me joining the CS world, was of a rude awakening in moving into my first operational function right out of college. I'll give you a real life example. I had 2 years of experience. I graduated my second major, which is finance, in 2008. First major was bio, and a minor in mathematics and chemistry. So I'm a science buff. And I graduated in the Great Depression, right? The Great Recession of 2008, that people were walking out of their offices. I'm here trying to get a job. I get a temporary job, and then I find a role at Univision, which was my first full-time gig. I'm really excited to start to interview for this role, and I realize I'm interviewing with another colleague who's vying for the same position. Fresh out of school, is the other candidate. I've been working for 2 years. And I'm competing against someone who's fresh out of school, happens to be white, and went to a top tier university, has no work experience, never worked a day in his life. That person, we both get hired. They created a role, a secondary role. There was only one. And that person gets a senior analyst position, and I get a just general analyst position. And it was my first like realization that, this is what happens, in some of these bigger companies. And I'm like, how can I not be a better fit? I have the work experience, I have the real life experience in this role. I've been in businesses for at least 2 years. And then I'm like, I didn't get passed, I got the job, but I got the lesser of the job. And the person with probably a better schooling than I did, I went to a private university as well, so not that big of a difference. But it just happens, something was different in that selection process. And that's what opened my eyes. And I said, the moment I get the opportunity to move into leadership, which has always been a passion of mine, I'm going to just focus on the qualities of what we're trying to hire for, and then make the job descriptions amenable for any background and any experience that could be complementary to what we're trying to solve for within that group. So just giving you that tidbit of my personal experience, because that's what set me off in this course, to constantly be creating opportunities, not only for folks internally. I make it very clear for my team. I'm a very big career person, so I love putting together career lattices and ensuring that folks understand what skill sets are they deficient in, where do they have to work towards, but then also thinking about this through the lens of what happens now when you're looking for talent externally. And you have to be a little bit more open-minded. Like the concept of you need 4 years of a 4-year degree and then all this experience in a specific area. I'm like, that doesn't fly now, because I'm like, I've gotten talent that is in hospitality and is coming into CS roles. And they're they're the best CSMs I've ever had in my experience as leaders. And it's just because they have, I would say, replicable experience that they could be trained on the technology, but you can't train somebody to be inherently customer focused. I'm like, that's something that's either you have it or you don't. I can try to train you, but you're either really frustrated when a customer is frustrated, or you're not, because you're always trying to problem solve. And I feel like those are the skills that a lot of folks, have, and they're just not, they don't know that they can apply for these roles, because the gate that blocks them is a JD, and the JD specifies a certain specificity, and people are afraid to put their name in the ring. I think that's the component that I realized early in my experience, that if I move into leadership, let's make it easier for folks to understand what they can and can't do. And if they can't apply for the role, even though the gate's not there because they're deficient in certain areas, how do we get them opportunities to push them in a direction so they can get certifications or trainings at their own free time as well?
Thanks for that, Chris. And really all three perspectives from Sean, Mike, and Chris, speaking to that, bringing something into CS that isn't there, from different functions and the different experiences. So my next question, I want to change things up a little bit. In terms of, the strength that you each felt you brought into CS coming into it, could be a skill, just a mind. What did you bring into this customer success space that you feel like has really helped you get to the point where you're at now, where you're all leaders in this growing space, growing function? Chris, you want to start out on that one?
Yeah, definitely. So skill sets that I think I bring, and I think in general folks should bring. That's why when I was really passionate about making the dive into the deep end of CS, is because I come from a strategy and operations background. So I would say I've cut my teeth with tough business transformations. I was a Green Belt, a Lean Six Sigma, Green Belt in Six Sigma, and my focus was always, how do I create operational efficiencies? I'm sure, Sean, you're probably internally grinning, because it's stuff you've done in the past as well. But I think all those things are a solid base, because I'm a successful CS leader is focused on how to create better synergies with how their customers are interacting with their solutions and see value. And then the secondary, most important piece is how do we make our CSMs or our platform experience people or our support apparatus much more efficient and be able to scale with where we're driving the business towards. And it's a marriage that is sometimes far away from each other when you arrive at a new business. And what I think ends up helping me in every role that I've had is the fact that I come at it from an operational perspective first. And then I think about it through the lens of like, if I'm a customer, what's the easiest path to finding the value that I was sold through in the sales cycle or the value that I was sold through as a 3-year customer in the CS engagement? And then I work backwards from like, how do we achieve that value and figure out like where the kinks are in the process and the workflow. And then how do we measure and then iterate off of it? I would say I'm a Virgo, so like everybody would say I'm a perfectionist. But when it comes to like operations, I like to just be able to measure things. I'm a big numbers person. So if I can see that this is moving the needle somewhere, I can then act on it. And I feel like my leaders, the way I've been grooming them is to focus on that operational rigor so they can be more successful as they continue to scale and hopefully take my role and go from there. And I think that's one of the skill sets, at least for me, that's been very, very powerful. Is just, being operationally focused and, delivering against the objectives that we've said we're going to deliver, which sound like a duh moment, but everybody on this call will tell you, like, when you're being thrown customer escalations, retention goals, some of us, like myself, I have growth expectations against the install, then I have to keep a certain NPS level, I have to keep a certain support, I own the support apparatus, so a certain level of customer satisfaction on that front. Then I'm also worried about like integrations and other companies where I'm like, it all comes into a central place of which if you're not operationally sound, all of it will unwind itself and then you're sitting on an island with no strategy. So that's the component I think that's been a strong underpinning.
Appreciate that. Mike, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah. So it was really interesting to hear Chris say that because I come from a slightly different angle. As like I mentioned before, I came out of school as a Java developer, so I'm a more technical kind of person. So each one of my roles when I started, I actually trained like a solutions engineer. I wanted to know the product so deeply that if I'm on a call, if I'm on one of my cadence calls or business review, whatever it is, and someone says, hey, I wasn't able to do this, or this didn't work correctly. Instead of having to jump off and say, hey, let me bring you somebody in, I can say, hey, let's take a look at it. Let's look at my demo environment. Let's look at yours. And I could give that advice to where, oh, this doesn't work because 2 steps ago, you didn't check this box, right? I wanted to know the product so deeply that I can actually advise and guide my customers in what it is that they're doing. Now, also, just from the curiosity of understanding my customers' industries, I really dug deep. I subscribe to their newsletters. I like RSS news feeds and everything because I want to understand what it is that the customers are doing. And if I can understand the direction that they're going, and I tell my employees this now, we talk about this all the time. They probably get tired of hearing me saying it. If you can understand what they're doing, the direction that they're going, and the product enough to say, this is how my product can make you hit those goals or head towards those goals, that's a match made in heaven. That's where that whole idea of a trusted advisor comes from. Because now you've opened up the gates and the customer is now saying, man, I really need to do this, but I don't know how to do this in public input. Let me call my CSM. Let's just talk. Let's just chat about it. Let's talk. And so being able to have that training, that technical training, like a solutions engineer, and we're not trying to take solutions engineers' jobs. We're not trying to do pre-sales demos and all of that sort of thing. All we're trying to do is understand the product enough to be able to connect it with the customer's goals of what they're trying to do. And that's what I think that I brought to every single role that I have. And now I'm bringing that to my employees.
Appreciate that, Mike. Sean, you want to close us out on this one?
Yeah, I guess coming from my consulting background initially, it was all about knowledge and human capital, right? Because you had no product. It was you going into each one of those client situations. And even when I moved into various SaaS companies, I kind of took that mindset with me, right? And so I tell people I had these 3 pillars of knowledge, and I'm very big on encouraging professional development with my team but it's functional, it's technical, and it's industry, right? And so, you know, you need the tools that a CSM needs to have, which I think success coaching is great about that. And, you know, I've been encouraging that in my team. I remember I talked to Mike about this before, and he had done something similar at one of his companies as well, where we, you know, almost mandated, I want you to get to at least level 1 or level 2, get to that, get those tools together. And then there's like the functional, not the functional, but the technical, the product knowledge, right? You got to go deep on the product, understand the solution set, obviously, so you know how far you can push it and how far you can, you know, connect to it, all those kind of things. And then the last is probably the most difficult, is the industry knowledge, right? Because now, you know, it takes time to acquire that. You know, you have to, maybe you didn't work in supply chain management in a certain, you don't really understand it because you haven't done it. So you have to pick up on that over time, look for industry certifications there. And I said, if you have that trifecta, to me, you're unstoppable, right? Because you know the industry, you have the functional tools, you have the technical product knowledge right there, and then you're very well armed. And hopefully that now you're credible and you'll be listened to. And I think if you build up that competence in those things, it will build up your confidence, right? So confidence, you know, begets confidence. And I think that's a big part of it. I came in, when I started working, I was kind of the youngest person in the room many times at those client situations. So you had to speak with some level of confidence. So you would bone up and make sure you understand the situation very well. You understand your product, you understand your solution. I kind of grew up on the SAP wave, right? So I had to really understand how to connect the dots with those systems and play it out in different industries. So you came in there and that was your strong foundation that lent your credibility there. And I think, you know, that propelled me in my career through a lot of different companies. So definitely agree with the educational component. Add that to being curious. I think that's a core personality trait. I think that any CS person needs. If they're not curious, you're not going to be successful. You have to be, you got to want to understand your customer situation, the problem. You got to be curious about your product. If you're not curious, you're probably not in the right profession.
Appreciate that, Sean, and just the 3 different perspectives from 3 different leaders, but I appreciate each and every one of you, you know, giving us those skills, those things you're looking for as you're hiring and building your teams out, because we know that that's the next step. So in terms of, you know, Black men who are looking to get into customer success, like what advice would you give to somebody who looks like you, right, who wants to get into this space and something that you feel like they should keep top of mind? You want to start us off, Mike?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think one of the key things to do if you're really interested in getting into customer success is really to learn about the community, learn about what it is. There's a lot of ideas of what customer success is. And I think we can, by joining different groups, you know, as Black in Success, you know, especially let's join that. Let's make sure we do that. But then, you know, you have things like Gain, Grow, Retain. You know, you have like these different book clubs. You have, you know, all of these different communities and where you can start to network. As I mentioned before, there's tons and tons of jobs out there. There's tons and tons of jobs out there. But having that ability to network with people, come to the different events. I host Gain, Grow, Retain every once in a while. You know, you're going to have those networking opportunities. But now, they didn't have this before when I was first starting, but now there's various certifications and you know, success coaching is one that I would highly recommend. As Sean said, I actually do require that for all of my employees, at least level 1. That's the only one that I did. I did in my last role, and I'm doing it in this role. And that certification at the very foundation, it gives you a step into the conversation. You now understand what people are talking about when we're talking about success plans or risk analysis, or, you know, talking to difficult customers, you know, just very basic things. And so that's all you need to get in there. But also don't be afraid to take a customer success specialist role. Don't be afraid to take a customer success engineer's role. You know, you got to get your foot in the door there. And customer success is still so young that if you get in anywhere, You get some experience, you get that on your resume, you start to grow, you get that certification, you decide to go to level 2, whatever it may, level 2 certifications, you're going to skyrocket. It's going to happen a lot faster than you think it would. And so I would say, get in there, get that education, get the certification, get the networking in. You will get something very quickly. But now, you have people to reach out to that look like you. And we're going to continue growing that. And there's going to be more people that look like you that's going to be able to mentor you and look and alert you to different opportunities that are coming along. So just get out there and start networking. I think that'll help you out.
Solid advice. Chris?
Yeah, to add on that, I think the certification stuff is obviously important, but then also thinking about ways, to like leverage the large network that's out there has been like part of my success in breaking in to the CS world. When I started 9 years ago, it was Client Success. They changed the name, a couple of times between now and then, but it was like I would say the folks around what the CS apparatus was very small. So you could talk to so many people of varying backgrounds and get a better understanding of what folks are doing to create opportunities for learning. There weren't any certifications, so I wish level 1, level 2 was available back when I started, because I would definitely try to see if what I've built within my teams that have been very successful, follow some type of path. Now I know it does because it's become a better and bigger apparatus. But ultimately, I think there's definitely opportunities within the networking community to just be curious about how people got to their functions, what exactly, what path did they take there. And you'll be surprised, everyone on this call, including even Kenneth, I'm all of us didn't just go straight into CS, right? There is different ways we got in here. What I would think about also is it's not only Black men, it's all, any person of color, should be focused around polishing their craft, right? When you move into CS, you become a little bit more focused on what exactly are the skill sets that will drive value-based opportunities for your customers. But a lot of that is individual growth in order to get to a perspective where you're comfortable enough to share the tougher parts of the conversations through a customer engagement, or just the technical experience that you may have with that solution, and drive clarity to a customer. I think clarity, conciseness, and all those areas of conversational economics with customers become even more important as you continue to scale in CS. So I think putting yourself out there, networking with folks becomes an important part of building that comfort level to have multiple facets of conversations, whether they're all positive or some of them might be negative, and you get to express yourself a little bit in a different position. So, my recommendation for folks, both male and female, that are trying to break in in the Black community into CS is take some time to learn what you're getting yourself into. And there's multiple opportunities. Success in Black is one of them, where we're trying to create a path and an avenue just to have conversations. And you'll be surprised, conversations at least in my career, have led to some of the best opportunities I've had. And they weren't through, let me just go and see what's out there and stuff. It's when you build a network, folks have you top of mind. I have folks that I talk to consistently, and I'm putting into play in a bunch of different places because I know that person. I know that they're doing everything. They've gotten the certifications. They are working hard to break into this industry, and I will do my darnest to get them in there. And if I can't, someone in my network will. And once they do it, it's not like I pat myself on the back. I'm like, all right, next one. Let's get more folks back, in this CS apparatus, because it is an exciting place to work in. And there's just a lot of problems to solve. And in many instances right now, with the Great Resignation, there's even better opportunities for folks to break in because other folks have decided to move into opportunities that make more sense for them. And I think that's the component that we also have to be mindful of.
Appreciate that. Sean, you want to close us out?
Yeah, sure. We talked about the educational piece. That's foundational. So you must do that. If anything, just sometimes to get the vernacular down, right? Because now I think there's expectations in the hiring circles they expect you to know these concepts, these words, these basic fundamental things, right? So it's not 2015 anymore, it's 2022. There's a little higher bar on what you're expected to know. So go for the certification. It's a no-brainer. And then I think in terms of, and I think network is like a played out word, but I can't think of anything better at the moment. But you have to obviously expand that network. And many times there's a concept that you have to borrow a network from someone. I mean, Ursula Burns, the first Black female CEO of a Fortune 500 company of Xerox, she started off as an executive assistant, to an executive. And what she did, she tapped in, she borrowed his network that got her to the next person who's grooming to be the CEO. So you have to kind of keep on if you don't have your own network, borrow someone else's, right? And they can connect you there. You can get deeper, you can accelerate your growth, because sometimes you may be coming into a little late. You don't want to waste time. So that person has the connections. That person knows what Slack group to join. He knows what forum to get into. So connect to that person and tap in. And I think you will find people like Chris and Mike and myself, we'll make time, we'll talk, we'll expand, we'll introduce and say, yeah, get on that panel, go talk to this person, go hop on Ken's podcast, all those kind of great things.
Appreciate that, Sean. You mentioned networking there at the very end, and we're seeing folks networking in the chat. So keep it going. I think now would be a good time to actually transition to some of the questions that have been coming in. People have been popping the questions in the Q&A. Feel free to pop over there if you see a question you like. Go ahead and upvote it. But we'll get into these. First one up, Tevin Broner. Do you guys think that you would feel different if you were on the sales side instead of the CS side? So anybody on the panel want to take that?
Well, I'll jump in on that. I carried a bag briefly in a business development side, and it's a different focus, right? And usually it's more of the hunter type of piece. I mean, I love sales. I love closing business, making your proposition, going through those pieces, the methodology around it, but it takes different muscles, I believe, than really CS, right? Because I think in terms of that problem solving, sales is kind of setting it up, and then there's like the handover, or at least there should be, right? And that's what make you successful there. So if you want to be that person, that sharp tip of the spear to penetrate and get in, sales is a great avenue, right? And you eat what you kill. And it's not for everyone, but it can be very rewarding because you get that immediate reward. Sometimes in CS, you don't get an immediate reward. You're making changes, and it may take months for that adoption to increase or for that benefit to materialize, because usually with more complex solutions, it takes time, right? Sales, depends on your sales cycle, of course, but you're usually moving the ball forward, and you get little wins until you close your deal. And then you're on to the next one. You need a junkie needs his fix, right? You got to move on to the next thing. That's sales if you're going to be good at it.
Appreciate that. Chris or Mike?
I think Sean hit it right on the head, and just taking a look at some of the other questions, maybe we jump into those.
Got it. Next up, Olivier, what are your organizations doing to recruit more people of color within their team of customer success?
I'll
Chris,
take this one.
Take this one first?
Yeah, definitely. So look, I think, to be, as upfront as possible, it's like you don't recruit based on color, et cetera. So I want to make that very clear. But what we have done, and what I've done in multiple companies I've been at, is, and I kind of alluded to this during my earlier answer, is making the JD accessible and open to anybody, regardless of your color, but also first and foremost focusing on the skill set that you're looking for, because those skill sets are applicable in other functions that other people have in different roles and at different companies. So it's looking at the job descriptions, ensuring that what we post on our site, it allows women, of color, women that want to break into leadership to also be able to apply to those roles all the way in general on the job description itself. And that's a powerful statement, because it's not only the fact that they're not applying, it's also the fact that the job description is such a gating mechanism for a lot of folks, regardless of color, that it's something that we as leaders, like pushing out these roles into the industry, we have to be a little bit more amenable to ensure that's not your cookie cutter copy and paste from a general descriptor of what the CSM role entails, and that we start recruiting a little bit more mindful. So I built a recruiting approach where it's focus areas that each individual person who meets with the candidates go through. So there's no subjectivity around like, I like this person, they're super nice, they're like me. I'm like, no, it's actually folks have very specified areas that they have to focus on. So when we look at all the candidates who come through, it's a very clear objective of what you're trying to measure someone for. And it's not looking at it through the lens of like, man, they're kind of like me in the sense of like similar personality. But then that person may, to be honest with you, be, it's this, you're hiring yourself 18 times, which would benefit us in this conversation because it's people of color. But if you actually start looking at it through the skills and what you're trying to drive in the JD, and then how you set up the interview process to be fair across the board, you'd be surprised the amount of talent. Like my team right now at Mountain, I'm like, we've increased diversity exponentially. I'm like, it's just because we've changed the approach and how we've posted the roles, who we've recruited. We've recruited folks from sales development roles that, in those functions, it was like the entryway to sales. I'm like, it's people of color in those functions. They move in, they realize that they're passionate more than just the sale. They want that customer to see value and continue to be a customer for a long period of time. So we've transitioned them over. And I think those are the opportunities and the focus areas on how to drive and recruiting, people of color, and just generally a strategy to drive recruiting going forward.
Appreciate that, Chris. Next up, I want to pass this one over to Mike. Again, Tevin chiming in with the questions. Any tips to move up the leadership ranks?
I think it's important to make it clear what your intentions are, in CS. When you're in a role, you get into a role, and be very clear with your manager to do that. So, obviously there's, just like many other roles, there's different paths, diverging paths. It is individual contributor, and then there's leadership. And so when you get into CS, I would say, talk to your manager. Talk to your manager about what it is that you want to do and how can you start showing that leadership without the title, because you don't need a title to be a leader. You actually can stand out in what you're doing and helping the team itself. But also, I know we're beating this to death, but the networking piece, reach out to some leaders, reach out to people who are leaders. What is it that they do? What is it that they care about? What are the metrics that they look at? So that you can start to prep yourself and starting to look at those things in your role. How do I contribute to, NRR, net retention rate? How is it that my actions do this? And when you start to look at your work from the eyes of a leader, someone who wants to be in management, that's what I define as a leader here in this space. You start to change a little bit, and that change actually starts to be visible outside of you. Your leaders are going to start looking like, okay, well, Mike is, he's kind of making he's having these conversations in our meetings. He's contributing strategically. He's, kind of out of the weeds sometimes when he needs to, but back in the weeds when he's doing his individual contributor work, and you become the next up. When the role comes up, there isn't a question. Be that person that you're the next name up without there even being an opening. Who's next? Oh, Mike, he's ready. He's ready for this. That's where you want to be. And you can do that by networking. Reach out to some of us on this panel. Reach out to people in Black in Success. We have a lot of great leaders, Black leaders. But, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but we have Black leaders who are always willing to say, look, I'll give you 30 minutes of my day. Here's my calendar link. I do it all the time. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I would also echo what Mike just said, but I think if you have developed a certain subject matter expertise within customer success, you stand out. So another part of being appointed a leader is just being noticed, right? And you can do that by, as Annika was saying, act like the job that you want, but the other part is standing out with some kind of expertise. Maybe you're the expert in onboarding, right? You go out there and get Donna Weber's book on onboarding matters, and you dig into that, and you become the super best onboarding expert. Maybe you're an expert in customer advocacy, you know the best practices, and you know the way to do that, right? And it always helps if it can help with revenue, right? So you do those kind of things, you stand out. And people who stand out, people get noticed, they get rung the leadership bell. Sometimes whether they're ready or not, but they're noticed.
Appreciate that piece there, Sean. And the next question up from Sil. Any advice for seeking out a mentor who can help you align and grow your career? I know the panel has mentioned a few things. If there's any particular direction we can give the folks chiming in, or listening in around the direction they should go in terms of selecting those mentors, if you have anything there. Anybody want to chime in on that?
I can chime in really quickly. I know of a couple programs that are out there for CS mentorship. I know Catalyst Software has I think it's called Coaching Corner. Signed up as a mentor this time around. GGR, Gain Grow Retain, actually has an initiative to find mentors for people who are looking. I'm sure Success in Black is going to be doing the same thing. So, I mean, just kind of look out there. But also, if you see someone you're interested in learning from, just reach out to them. They may be interested in helping, mentoring you, and having a call every once in a while to help answer some questions and help you get through.
Great call out there, Mike. And one of the things I want to add on to that real quickly, in this environment we're in, virtual first, some of that due to the pandemic. I always try my hardest when somebody reaches out on LinkedIn to respond. I know it's not possible to respond to everybody, but I think to your point, Mike, just reaching out on the communication channels we have at our disposal, just an honest, no robotic kind of automated approach. I in my bubble, right? I try to make sure that I communicate, reply to those folks that take that time. And so I think that's really spot on for you to mention that there. In closing, we got a few more questions, but we do have to wrap up. So for the folks who we didn't get to your question, definitely want to make sure we keep the conversation going. You can reach out to Success Coaching and Success in Black as well if you want to keep the dialogue going. But in closing, we just want to thank our guests, our panelists, for making this a great discussion. So many gems were dropped from each individual. I know Sean put it out there in terms of like keeping the conversation going, reaching out via the channels that we all know that are at our disposal. We hope you got something from this, and we want to just end the conversation by making sure you continue to invest in yourself. There's resources out here. I think each of the gentlemen on the panel really spoke to when they started. There weren't too many resources in place, and it seems like now some really cool certifications and things are out there for you to take advantage of. Please follow Success in Black on LinkedIn to stay connected, and also please check out Success Coaching's website for detailed information on what they can offer you. For those folks who are looking to break into customer success and even level up their customer success toolkit. For those interested in earning the CCSM level 1 cert, please use the coupon code CSM Career-80 to save 80% when enrolling in the Launch Solo annual plan by March 31st. We'll drop that in the chat, but saving 80% there. So, after this discussion, I know a lot of you are interested in diving into this space even more. So that's your opportunity there. But definitely want to make sure we keep the conversation going and continue to invest in yourself. Thanks again to the panelists, and we're going to wrap up things here. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.